Hey, what's up everyone? Welcome back to Babylon Talmud. Today we're studying Daf Yud Daled of Masechta Sheqalim. Daf Yud Daled is a pretty awesome daf. We continue talking about, we kind of, conclude our Mishnah from yesterday with all the different people in the Beis HaMikdash and their roles. And then we get to a new Mishnah about other appointees in the Beis HaMikdash. Interesting Gemara about the wealth of Moshe Rabbeinu, and then some other technical things about how exactly to pay for your libations at the temple. All super interesting stuff. Let us begin at the beginning of Yud, at the bottom of Yud Gimel Amud Beis, all the way at the bottom. Nechunya Chofer Shichin. Okay, we're talking about Nechunya, the digger of what's a shichin? Ditches. That he would dig ditches and caves. And he knew which rocks were would cool water, and which stones were hot, had heat. And how far their heat would reach. So basically he knew how to locate the rocks that had cool water, how to locate the rocks that had hot water, that would make hot water. So he was the water expert. Omar Reb Eliezer, Umeiz beno batzama, and says Reb Eliezer that tragically his son died of thirst. Omar Chanina, Manda Omer Rachmana Vatron Yisvatron B'nei Ma'uye. Okay, says Reb Chanina that if a fellow says that the Eibishter is a Vatron, what's a Vatron? Somebody who, unless you get away with things or whatever, I don't know what the right word is. Forgiving, overseeing, overlooking. Well, Yisvatron B'nei Ma'uye, you should get diarrhea. All right. Elamayich Rather, in truth, what's happening is that the Eibishter has patience. But ultimately, if you don't get your act together and you don't do tshuva, so then he's going to exact whatever he needs to exact from you. Amar ba'acha, ksiv usvivav nisarim me'od. The pasuk says that his surroundings are very stormy. Medaktek iman kchutasayra, meaning nisara a storm would generally be written with the letter samech, but over here it's written with the letter sin. So we make a drasha of kchutasayra like a hair, and so usvivav kilu, with those surrounding him, with those who are close to him, the Eibishter can be very exacting to even a hair's breadth. Omer Reb Yossi lo mitam azeh elo Min Madichsiv, says Rabbi Yossi, rather we don't learn enough from that pasuk, rather we learn enough from a different pasuk. V'noru al kol sviva, that the Eibishter is awesome on his surroundings. Kilu mora'u ala krovim yosem and harchokim, his fear is upon those who are close to him more so than those who are distant from him. There was a story with a certain chassid who was who would dig pits, ditches, and caves. Now, it's tempting to say that this fellow was Nechunya Chofer Shichin, but it doesn't seem that would be the case, though. So, because we're going to see that he interacts with Pinchas ben Yair. Pinchas ben Yair was during around Reb Shimon's time, Reb Akiva's time, and that was after the Beis HaMikdash. And this seems to be during the Beis HaMikdash. So, anyways, Nechunya Chofer Shichin was during the time of the Beis HaMikdash. Anyways, so there was a story with a certain chassid who would dig pits and ditches and caves, la'ovrim v'shavim, for the passerby, so that they would have water. Pamachas ha'isabito averis li'inose. One time, his water was on her way to get married. V'shatva nahar, and she got swept away by a river, and she was presumed dead. So everybody, there was a tragedy in town, clearly. So everybody came to this chassid in order to console him, but he refused to be consoled. All Reb Pinchas ben Yair legabe, Reb Pinchas ben Yair went to console this chassid. He wanted to console him, and yet this chassid refused to accept condolences from Reb Pinchas ben Yair. So Pinchas ben Yair said to the people, Deinu chasidchon, this is your chassid, that he won't accept my condolences. They said to him, Rebbe, so they explained to Reb Pinchas ben Yair the context. Look, we're talking about somebody who devoted his whole life to making sure that people had water, and his daughter, tragically on her way to her chasana, got swept away by water. Omer, so Pinchas ben Yair says, wait, this doesn't make any sense. So now that I understand the context, I don't understand. Is it possible that you have somebody who honored his creator with water, and the Eibishter basically punished him and killed his daughter with water? And all of a sudden, there was like, rumors spreading around the city. People were talking. Apparently, his daughter survived. The chassid's daughter survived, and she came back. There are those who say that she was managed to grab hold of a branch. There are those who say that actually what happened was an angel came down from the heaven that looked like Reb Pinchas ben Yair, and this angel saved this chassid's daughter. Wow, what a story. Gvine Karuz. Then the Mishnah was talking about Gvini the announcer. What did he announce? He would announce in the Beis Hamikdash. What did he say? What would he say? The Kehanim should get up and do their work in their service in the temple. And that the Levites should go to their platform where they would sing. And the Yisraelim should go to where they would stand and daven for meaning. We're going to learn about this in Masechta Taanis, which is already, it almost feels like it's around the corner, within the year, I think. So basically, there were groups of just regular Yisraelim that would pray for at the time that they would that the korbanos were being offered. So he would say, Yisraelim, go and do your prayers. Agrippas HaMelech Shama Kolo ad Ches Parsos. One time, Agrippas HaMelech, or maybe more than once, but Agrippas HaMelech was able to hear the voice of Gvini, the announcer, up to 8 parsos away. Oh my. V'nosan matanos harbe, and Agrippas the king rewarded Gvini the Karuz by giving him lots of gifts. Wow. Ben Gever on Ilas Shairim. So the Mishnah said that this fellow named Ben Gever, he was in charge of locking the gates of the temple at night. So there's a machlokas now that the Gemara is going to mention about, there's a concept called Kros Gever. The question is, what does that mean, Kros Gever, the calling out of the Gever? So Tirgim Rav Kume Deves Vibshila. So Rav explained in front of the Bismedrash of Vibshila, Kra Gavra Achriz Kroza, that it means that a fellow would call out. Omarle. So they said to Rav, Emor Kra Tarnagola. No, I'll say it means that the rooster cried out. That Gvar Gever is referring to a rooster. Omarle. Ben Gever Isach Lemimar ben Bar Tanagola. But one second, our Mishnah refers to an individual whose name was Ben Gever. Is it possible that means he was the son of a rooster? Surely not. So therefore, that's Rav's proof that Ben Gever means a fellow would call out, not a rooster calling out. Ben Bevai ala Pakia. Ben Bevai was in charge of the wicks. Shoy Mizavik Psilis, that he would prepare the wicks for the menorah. Rabbi Yossi al Kufra. Rabbi Yossi one time went to a place called Kufra. Bo Mimanya Alayun Parnosim V'lo Kiblun Minhon. And he wanted to put in place therein a leader for them who would take care of the communal responsibilities, but he could not find anybody to accept. So he said to them, Ben Beva Ela Pakia, the Mishnah says that there was a fellow named Ben Bevi. What was his responsibility? To make wicks. If you have a fellow who his responsibility was simply to make wicks, and yet that was enough for him to be, was significant enough, important enough for him to be listed among the greatest of the generation. So you people of Kufra, who, there's an opportunity here to be responsibility for matters of life and death. Certainly that's a very important and significant role. Can I find somebody to step into it? Ben Arza ala Tziltzol. Ben Arza was in charge of the symbols, ki tanina, like that which we learned in a Mishnah in Yoma. Or was it Tamid? I'm not sure. Taman, okay, over there. Heinif haseged besudarid vehekish Ben Arza ala Tziltzol. That at the time, if the Kohen Gadol were to offer the Korban Tamid, excuse-moi. Anyways, so if the Kohen Gadol was to offer the Korban Tamid, now he didn't have to offer the Korban Tamid, but if he wanted to offer the Korban Tamid, so then you would have the assistant Kohen Gadol. He would do he would wave the scarf, right? So the flag. So if the Kohen Gadol was offering the Korban Tamid at the time that the Kohen Gadol was pouring the wine libations into the Mizbeach, so then the Skan Kohen Gadol, the assistant Kohen Gadol, would wave scarves or flags. Vehekish Ben Arza ala Tziltzol, and Ben Arza would clamor the cymbals, and at that point the Leviim would start to sing. Okay. Hugras ben Levi al Ashir. Hugras ben Levi was in charge of the singing. Omer Reb Acha, says Reb Acha, Ni'ima Yisera Yodea, that Hugras ben Levi had a very, very, very beautiful voice. Vamu'alav al Hugras ben Levi, they said about Hugras ben Levi, Sheyamanim Eskolo bezemer, that he had a very sweet voice. Uchshaya noetz godlo b'soch piv, and when he would stick his thumb into his mouth, hayamotzi kamamine zemer, he would be able to create all sorts of different notes and sounds. And somehow this means that all the Kohanim would somehow like jump away because of the power of it. Okay. Beis Garmu Amaisi Lechem Apodim, we said that the house of Garmu, their expertise and their responsibility was that they would prepare the Lechem Aponim, the breads, the 12 loaves of bread that would be eaten each Shabbos and were stored during the week on the shulchan and would never get moldy, would be fresh even after sitting out for a whole week. The family of Garmu, they were experts in the preparation of the Lechem Aponim, and how to take it out from the oven. And they didn't want to teach anybody else how to do this skill. Shalchu Chacham veviu umanim me'Alexandria. So the Chacham went and they sent for experts in making the panim bread, making the lechem apanim from Alexandria in Egypt. Shay became b'maisa lechem apanim, that they knew how to prepare the lechem apanim. U'vidiyaso lohayu bikin. The problem was that they did not know how to take the bread out of the oven. So while they knew how to prepare the bread, they didn't know how to take it out of the oven. And Beis Garmu ayu masikin mi bifnim v'rodim b'chutz v'lo ha'isem misapeshes. In Beis Garmu, they knew the technique of, they would light the fire in the oven and they would bake the breads in the oven, and when it was time to take the breads out of the oven, they would take out the breads from the oven and remove it from their mold, right? Because the lechem apanim was a unique shape. It was like a box. So it was made in a mold. So the family of Garmu, they knew to take the breads out of the ovens while still in their mold, and then remove the breads from the mold afterwards, once it was outside of the oven. And the bread would not get moldy, meaning you got two kinds of mold here. The mold that would shape the bread and the mold that grows on the bread if you don't do it right. So because Beis Garmu knew what they were doing, they would take the bread out of the oven first and then remove it from the mold, and then the bread would not get moldy. Whereas these experts from Alexandria, while they got 90% of the way there, or let's say 80%, so we have, what's his name? Maslow? Is that Maslow? No, Maslow's something else. No, this was, what's the Pareto's principle, right? The 80-20. So let's call it 80%. So, what are we talking about? So these experts from Alexandria, so they can get like 80% of the way there, but the final 20% was missing, i.e., they didn't know how to take how to do that last step of taking the breads out of the mold, and they would take the breads out of the mold while they were still in the oven, and the bread would get moldy. The bread would get moldy. Once the Chachamim heard about like what was going on, they said, look, everything that the Eibishter created, he created it for his honor. Shenemar, as the pasuk says, that everything that the Eibishter does is for himself, on his own behalf. I guess that the point of this is like, look, this is the Metzias. What can we do? We have to get back the people from Beis Garmu. So they sent back to Beis Garmu. And Beis Garmu was not interested in coming back until the Chachamim had to double their wage. Initially, they would accept 12 manas for their work, for their services, and now the Chachamim gave them 24. Reb Yehuda says no, it was actually initially 24 manas, and then they had to give them 48. So then they asked the family of Garmu, how come you don't want to teach other people outside of the family? They responded, we have a tradition from our fathers that this temple is ultimately going to be destroyed. And Beis Garmu, in defense of their principle not to teach other people, so they said, we're concerned that when the Beis Hamikdash is destroyed, if other people know how to prepare this lechem aponim, they might prepare these lechem aponim for their getchkes, for the avodah zarah, and Beis Garmu did not want that to happen. So to protect and to prevent the situation of people using the lechem aponim recipe for avodah zarah, so they just kept it within the family. But dvarim halalu, okay. Now, b'dvarim halalu maskirin also in the shvach. Now, in the following way, they would mention the family of Garmu in a positive way, in a praiseworthy way. Shlo yatsa biad b'neim pas nikia me'olam. Shlo yu omim mi'ma'aseh lechem aponim mi'mochlim. And kind of like we said the other day, with the fellow who goes into the treasury to take the coins, that he shouldn't have long hair or any hems or anything like that, because we don't want anybody to suspect anything. So also in the Beis Garmu, they took their responsibility of the Maaseh Lechem Aponim very seriously, and they would never be seen with any bread on them whatsoever. So nobody should have any havamina to say that they're taking the bread of the Lechem Aponim for themselves. So to avoid any sort of suspicion, they would simply avoid ever being seen with regular bread, so nobody should think that it came from the Lechem Aponim. Beis Avtinas al Maaseh Aktoros. So the Mishnah said that the house of Avtinas, they were in charge of the preparation of the Ktoros. So Beis Avtinas ayu bikina al Maaseh pitum Aktoros uv'mayla ha'oshon. So the family of Avtinas, so they were experts when it came to the preparation of the incense, as well as this special grass that was called mayla ha'oshon, that was included in the Ketoros, that would make the smoke go straight up in a column. And they didn't want to teach other people. So they sent and they brought artisans from Alexandria. Interesting. I wonder what was the deal with Alexandria. Was that like the place? So they brought experts from Alexandria, in Egypt, and they were experts with preparation of Ketoros. But one thing was missing. They were not experts with this specific grass that was called Maila Oshon. Avtinas mitamer va'ola kemakol ufosav yoredis. When the family of Avtinas would prepare the incense, so the smoke would go straight up, and then only once it went outside the roof of the Beis Hamikdash would it then spread out and go downwards. V'shel elu isa posa miyad, whereas the incense of these artisans would immediately spread out. It didn't have that finishing touch of going straight up in a column. Once the Chachamim heard that it wasn't working out with the craftsmen from Alexandria, Amru, they said, that everything that the Eibishter does is for his honor. Shenemar, as the pasuk says, anybody who's called out in my name, so in my honor I created him, etc. So just like with the Beis Garmu, the Chacham sent after the Beis Avtinas, and Beis Avtinas was not interested in returning until the Chacham doubled their wages. Yud Beis Mana ayu notlin v'nosnu len chav daled, Rabbi Yehuda omer chav daled ayu notlin v'nosnu len mem ches. Initially, they would accept 12 mana as their wage, and they doubled it to 24. Rabbi Yehuda says that initially they would accept 24 mana as their wage, and it was doubled to 48. And they asked the family of Avtinas, how come you're not interested in sharing the secrets or the recipe of the Ketores, and how to put it together and make it happen? Amrulain, so the family of Avtinas responded, Masorisi bi'adenu, it's a tradition in our hands, me'avosenu, from our father, Shabai Sazeh, Osid lechariv, that the temple is going to be destroyed, so that others should not learn how to make the Ketores and then use the Ketores for the Getchkes, for their Avodah Zarah. But in the following way, we mention the family of Avtinas in a positive light for praise, that no woman from the house of Avtinas ever went out wearing perfume. And not only that, and if a man from the house of Avtinas would marry a woman from a different family, he would do it under the condition, under the condition that she does not wear perfume. Said nobody should have the havmina to say that the family of Avtinas is perfuming themselves from the preparation of the Ketores. As the pasuk says, to fulfill what the pasuk says, we learned the other day that you should be clean from God and also from Israel. So that nobody should have any gossip around them or any havaminas to say that they're using the incense for their own personal purposes to wear perfume. Nobody in the family would wear perfume. Says Rabbi Yossi that one time he was standing in Yerushalayim. Now, Rabbi Yossi was a Tana. He lived, I don't know, how long after the Beis Hamikdash? Not very long. Maybe 4 generations after the Beis Hamikdash. So, it was still pretty fresh. And he was in Yerushalayim. Rabbi Yossi, I think, was from Tzipori. At least we saw the Gemara in Shabbos that Rabbi Yossi was exiled by the Romans to Tzipori. Anyways, he says that one time he was in Yerushalayim, and he says that he found a child from the family of Avtinas. Amartilo, I said to him, Beni, my son, me'ezu mishpacha at, what family are you from? Amrli mi mishpachas ploni. He said, look, I'm from such and such a family, i.e. from Beis Avtinas. Amartilo, I said to him, Beni, my son, my son, because your family, because your fathers, they intended to increase their own honor and to decrease the honor of God by not sharing their secret of the Ketores, of the preparation of the Ketores. That's why their own honor has dwindled, but the honor of the Eibishter has increased. Amr Bakiva, Sachli Shimon ben Luga told Rabbi Akiva, one time I was gathering grasses, and me and together with me was a child from the family of Avtinas. And I saw that this child from the family of Avtinas, he was crying and he was laughing. I said to him, my son, how come you're crying? Omar Li, he said to me, Al Kvod Shel Beis Abash Nismaid, because of the honor of my fathers that has dwindled. And how come you're laughing? Omar Li, he said to me, Al Kavod Masukin Tzadikim Lasulavu, for the honor that is prepared for the righteous in the world to come. Umar Isa, and he said to the child, and what news and what have you seen? Maila Oshin Lenegdi. And this child said, oh, right in front of us, there's taka maila oshon grass, this secret ingredient for the of Beis Avtinas for the Maaseh HaKetoros. Numisilo. So Reb Shimon ben Luga says, I said to this child, B'ni Euli, can you show me which is the maila oshon? Omerli, he said to me, Rebbe, Masoras biyad mi'avosa. Look, there's a tradition from my fathers, sholar osu levarayu, that we can't show it to anybody else. I'm sorry. Amr Reb Yochanan ben Nuri, says Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri, one time an elder from the family of Avtinas encountered me, and he had a scroll with spices in his hand. Omar Li, he said to me, Rabbi Lishavar, and this elder from the family of Avtinas with this bundle of spices said to Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri, he says, look, in the past, the people of my family were very modest and humble. And they would only transfer this bundle of spices one person to the next within the family. However, now that I can't trust that the people of my father's house of Beis Avtinas cannot be trusted. So Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri, why don't you take this scroll of spices, and be careful with it. Now Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri continues and he relates that when he told over this incident to Rabbi Akiva about how this elder from the Beis Avtinas was willing to give him, Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri, this bundle of spices because the people within his family could not be trusted any longer. Zogu einav dmos, Rabbi Akiva began to cry. He says, so we no longer need to mention Beis Avtinas, the family of Avtinas, in a derogatory manner, because we can see from this incident that really they did have pure intentions and just motives, and they did really want to keep it in their family only because they wanted to make sure it didn't get into the wrong hands. But the second that they realized that, look, within their family, it wasn't the best place for the secret of the Ketores to be, they were willing to give it to Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri, right? That really their main concern was that the Ketores should remain in proper hands, and if that meant that their family were no longer the proper hands, well then they were willing to be mevater on their own honor and their own family secret to give it to somebody else who will be able to preserve it. So Rabbi Akiva said, we no longer should be thinking about the family of Avtinas in a negative light, that really they had ehrlich intentions. Elazar ala paroches, the pasuk said, the Mishnah had said that Elazar was in charge of the curtains in the temple. Shememuna al orge paroches, he was in charge of the weavers of the curtains. Okay, and that responsibility. Pinchas amalbish, Pinchas the clother, the person who would give people clothing and dress them. Shemalbish bigdei kahuna gedola, that he would adorn the Kohen Gadol with the vestments of the Kuna Gedola. Ma'aseh b'chayin echad shel bishle istartios echad. There was a story with a certain Kohen who put clothing on a certain officer, military officer. V'nasan lo shmona zehuvim, and this military officer gave this Kohen 8 gold coins. V'izdamin treya so yoavle. Those who say that Itaka gave him 50% more, that Itaka gave him 12 gold coins. That sounds nice. I don't think I have any gold coins. Do you guys have gold coins? Let's go weiter. We're up to Halacha Beis in the 5th parak of Sheqalim. Ein pochsim mishiva amar kolin v'shlosha kizbarin. So in the Beis Hamikdash there were never less than 7 supervisors and 3 treasurers. Ve'in osin shara al tzibur pachos mishnaim. We don't have any sort of public power, office, less than 2. Chutz mi ben Achia sha'achol me'ayim, with the exception being ben Achia, who was in charge of the Kohanim with their intestinal complications. Ve'elazar shala paroches, and Elazar, who was in charge of the curtains in the temple, she'osan kiblu rov hatzibur alein, that they were accepted by the majority of the congregation, even though they were just one fellow. In Pochsim Megimel Gizbarim Mizana Markolin. So regarding what the Mishnah said, that we don't have less than 3 treasurers and 7 supervisors, Tani, it was taught Mishnei Kaslikin, that there's also 2 overseers over the supervisors. All right. Hadau d'chsev, this is what the pasuk says: V'chiel v'uziyahu v'nachas Gizbarin. That Yechiel, Uziyahu, and Nachas were the treasurers. V'asol v'yarmus v'yizev v'eliel v'yismachyo u'machas uv'nayo amar kolin. They were the supervisors. P'kidim yad konanyo v'shimi achiv. And then they were appointed by Konanyo and Shimi, his brother. They were the kaslikin, the supervisors. No, the overseers. B'mifkad Yechizkiyahu melech v'Azaryahu nigid beis Elokim, under the that they were appointed by Yechizkiyahu the king, and Azaryahu the Kohen Gadol, Hamelech v'Kohen Gadol, the king and the Kohen Gadol. Okay, so when they would have to seal something, I don't know, someone they would have some money, they'd have to seal it. So first, the treasurer would seal it and give it to the supervisor. The supervisor would seal it and give it to the overseer. The overseer would seal it and give it to the Kohen Gadol. The Kohen Gadol would then seal it and give it to the king. And when they would need to unseal things to get the money out, so first the king would unseal. So the king would kind of check his seal, make sure it hasn't been tampered with, and then he would unseal it. The Kohen Gadol would check his seal, and if it was untampered, he would open up the seal. Then the overseer would check his seal and then open it. The supervisor would then check his seal and open it. And finally, the treasurer would check this seal and open it as long as it hasn't been tampered, and then they would be able to get out money, whatever this process looked like. Betachlis, it's a little bit hard for me to imagine, but basically there was sort of a chain that this would have to go through in order to open and close stuff. All right. Sounds a little complicated, but all right, let's go weiter. So whenever it comes to like a financial position in the community, so we always have at least 2. So Rav Nachman b'shem Rav Mana al Shem. So Rav Nachman says the name of Rav Mana, that it's based on the pasuk that says V'yikhu es hazav es hatcheles v'es ha'argamon, that they will take the gold and the tcheles and the argamon. And haim is plural, so there have to be at least 2. Amr Reb Chama b'Reb Chanina mipsol shaluchos ha'esher Moshe. So Reb Chana b'Reb Chanina says that Moshe got wealthy from the psoles of the luchos. Hadau d'chsev, this is what the pasuk says: Psal lecha shnei luchos, make for yourself 2 luchos avanim. Shnei luchos avadim. Psal lecha shetei psal shecha, that the psal should be for yours. What does that mean? It means that when it came to the second luchos, so the Eibishter says to Moshe, Psal lecha shnei luchos avadim karishonim, make for yourself these new luchos. After the first ones, the first tablets were broken, so Moshe had to make new ones. And it says Psal lecha, make for yourself these luchos. So what the Eibishter is saying is that when the Eibishter, was going to etch the writing onto the luchos, whatever stone was misplaced by the etchings, right? Any leftovers from the etching, Moshe was able to keep, and that was very valuable, and that is how he became wealthy. Interesting. Amar Reb Chanan says, Reb Chanan machzav shel avanim tovus u'margalios bar lo HaKadosh Baruch Hu mitoch ohalo mimenu e'esher Moshe. Says Reb Chanan that the Eibishter created a quarry of very expensive stones in Moshe's tent, and that's how Moshe became wealthy. Ksiv, the pasuk says, period. Okay, so apparently Moshe was wealthy. Yeah, very, very interesting, sort of the methods of how he became wealthy. He just kind of got it from God, which is interesting. Ksiv, the pasuk says, "V'bitu achrei Moshe ad boa ola," that they would look after Moshe until he went into his tent. Treina Amoraim, there are two Amoraim who kind of argue how to understand this pasuk. Charomer the Gnai, Charomer the Shvach. One understands this pasuk that it was understood in a negative way, whereas another one understands that this pasuk was understood in a positive way. Manda Amr the Gnai, the fellow who understands it in a negative light, Chamun Shakin, it means that the Bnei Yisrael would say, look at the thick thighs of Moshe Rabbeinu. Chamun Karen, look at his thick knees. Chamun Kupad, look at his fat flesh. Achum min diyudai, v'shasim min diyudai, that he's eating from the Yidden and he's drinking from the Yidden. Kol midile min diyudai. Everything that belongs to Moshe Rabbeinu is coming from the Yidden. Now, of course, that's not true. Moshe Rabbeinu did not steal from the Yidden, but I do kind of, in a certain sense, I understand their taina. If you understand it to mean kilu, where's all this wealth coming from? It didn't make sense. Everyone's in the midbar. Probably most of the people are unemployed. And then you have Moshe Rabbeinu who's got all this wealth. Now, we just learned that it didn't come you didn't steal it from the Yidden, but it did come in sort of this like magic kind of way. Like, obviously, Moshe Rabbeinu had connections. He was very close to God, and God just kind of like gave him like shavings of the luchos, or like a very expensive stone quarry in his tent. And it's like very interesting. So while yes, it's true what they were saying were untrue, but the sentiment, if you understand it from like, I don't get it. How is Moshe Rabbeinu so wealthy? Like, we see he's not working all day. Where does this wealth come from? So like, I don't know, it did raise suspicion. It's like an interesting kind of thing to think about. Umad Amar the Shvach, Mechamed Tzadikaya Umazake Tuvia Dezachas Lemecheme Yosei. Those who, the ones who understand this pasuk in a positive light, basically they would say, look at this tzaddik and merit. It's such a merit to be able to see, to be able to look at the face of a tzaddik. New Mishnah Halacha Gimel Dal Chosomosayu B'Mikdash. There were four types of tokens in the Beis Hamikdash. Right? We had said all the way at the beginning of the parak that there was this sort of, if you had to bring a korban, and with your korban you brought, let's say, a flour libation. So how'd you buy the flour? So if you're going to buy it at the Beis Hamikdash, so first you would go to Yochanan, right? Did he have another name or just Yochanan? I think he had another name. Yochanan ben Pinchas. So you'd first go to Yochanan ben Pinchas. You would pay for whatever the flour cost, and he would give you this token. You would then take this token over to Achia, and he would give you the flour. So the Gemara says, the Mishnah says, that there were four types of tokens that they had in the Beis Hamikdash. And it was written on the different tokens, Egel Zachar Gdi V'chote. Either it's a token for a cat, for cattle, for a calf, or for a ram, or for a kid, like a goat, or for a sinner. Benazai Omer says, Benazai, hey, are you? There were taka 5 of them, Varamus Kasuv Aleim, and it was taka written on them in Aramaic. Egel, also a calf, Dechar, a ram, Gedi, a goat, Chote, or a sinner. Chote Dal, Chote Asher. And the final two are either a poor sinner or a wealthy sinner. Egel, Mishamish im Nisre Bakr. So the token that said on it, calf, would be, that would be the token that would be used for all types of cattle offerings. Whether we're talking about big cattle, small cattle, male cattle, female cattle. Gedi, the token that said on it, goat, that would work for all types of flock, sheep, goats, gedolim, ktanim, big, small, male, female, chutz mishel elim, the exception being for a ram. A ram would have its own token. The ram token was good only for the rams. And the token that said on it sinner, so that was the token for the 3 types of animals that a mitzora would have to bring. Holich lo etzel Yochanan shu memuna al chosamos, somebody who needed to get these libations, so he would go to Yochanan, who was in charge of the tokens, v'nosin lo maos, and he would pay Yochanan, and in return he would get this token, and he would bring the token over to Achia, who was in charge of the libations, and he would give this token to Achia, and then Achia would give him the libations that he needed. And every evening, Yochanan and Achia would sit down together. Achia would come with all of the tokens that were given to him throughout the day, that were transferred for the libations. So now if Achia gives Yochanan all the tokens that he had collected that day, and there were more tokens than money received by Yochanan, well then Yochanan had to cover the loss himself. If there was more flour given out that day than was paid for, Yochanan would have to cover the difference on his own. And if for whatever reason there were more tokens sold than flour given, well then the gain was given to the hektish, shiad hektish ala elyona, because the hand of hektish has the upper hand. Mishavar chosamo, if you have a fellow who purchased a token and then it got lost, it got misplaced, mamtinu lo ada erev, so you could wait until the evening, v'matzu lo kedei chosamo, nosno lo, and if there's enough leftover flour, other people didn't claim their tokens, so if there's enough left over for this fellow to be able to collect his misplaced token, so then they give it to him, v'imlav. But if there's not enough leftovers to be able to supply this fellow with the misplaced token, lo hayu nosnin lo, they would not give it to him. V'shem hayom kasuv aleim pnei haramayim, and the name of and the date was written on these tokens, so that it would be more difficult to forge. Well, Chevra, we're going to stop here. That was Daf Yudalet. I think it was a very beautiful daf, right? We had some cool stories. Pinchas Ben Yair was back, and Chunya Chofer Shichin, the families of Beis Avtinas and Beis Garmu, and their secrets and what they would do so that nobody should suspect them, and that in the end we say that their motives were pure, as we saw by this fellow from the house of Avtinas who was willing to give this family secret over to Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri so that it should be properly protected. We saw where the wealth of Moshe Rabbeinu came from, which was also an interesting sugya, as well as what the process was for claiming Nesachim and purchasing Nesachim in the Beis Hamikdash. I hope that you enjoyed Daf Yudalad and have a great day. Cheers.